idea. I took some notes down so we can compare a 30-year mortgage to a 50-year mortgage. If we had a 30-year loan on a $400,000 house at today's rates, you would have a $2,660 monthly payment. If you were to get a 50-year loan on that $400,000 home at today's rates, your payment would drop to $2,380, saving you $280 a month. Principal per payment. This is saying how much of your mortgage payment is actually going toward paying off the loan. On a 30-year loan for that $400,000 house, you'd be paying off $327 per payment. With a 50-year mortgage, though, you'd only be paying off $47 per payment. Full interest by the end of the loan. At the end of the 30-year loan, you will have paid $957,600, $557K of that being interest. On the 50-year loan for the same exact house, you would end that 50-year period paying $1.713 million, $1.3 million of it being interest. And last stat, if you were to own that home for 10 years with a 30-year mortgage, that $400K home, you now own $56,000 of it. You have $56K in equity. But after 10 years of the 40-year mortgage, you'll only own $14,000 worth of the home. You won't be able to refi, you'll hardly be able to sell, and by the end of it, you will have given the bank 3 to 4 times the amount of your mortgage. A 50-year mortgage is an awful idea.
Okay, that one had a lot of numbers. So let's go ahead and go over some of those. At the end, he talked about you with a 30-year loan, if I'm not mistaken, with that $400,000 house, you may end up having about $56,000, I think, in equity versus the 50-year, about $14,000. Now I'm assuming this is if the house stays the exact same price. Obviously, houses go up. So whatever you paid, that $400,000 house that you paid 10 years ago will probably end up being more. So on both sides, you'll end up with more money. Regardless, with the 30-year loan, 10 years, you probably still going to be making over $56,000. You may have like 60, 70. It depends on how the housing market is within those 10 years, but you should see an increase. So at the lower end of the 14,000, you would still see a little bit more than that. However, the other numbers there were really interesting about the interest rate. With the 50 years, you're only paying $47 toward the principal and the rest towards the interest for a longer period. Of course, if you haven't bought a house or not aware, you're paying a lot of interest up front. And then at the end, that's when you're knocking out more of the principal, in your 30-year loan. So yeah, that is a big difference. However, again, it's kind of like, it reminded me of Dave Ramsey when he says not even to do the 30-year loan. You should be focusing on the 15-year loan.